Hey YouTube, coming at you today with an Airsoft helmet that I've been working on. My son and I, we got into playing Airsoft about 6 months ago, and we really enjoy it. But I've decided that I don't like taking BB shots off the top of my head, and my goggles and my prescription glasses tend to fog up real bad. So I thought it was time to do something about it. I got on YouTube, watched a few videos, got some great ideas, and took some of that information and modified a few things. And here's what I come up with. So the helmet itself is made by FMA. I've got a really big head, so I needed something that I could adjust and make work for me. And this is what I ended up with. It's got some nice padding on the inside, so it's real comfortable to wear in the field. But the biggest modification I made to it was the fan. So I needed to get my goggles to where they wouldn't fog up. Here's a few of the supplies that I used, and I'll show you what I did for my fan installation. So I needed some extra wire. So here we have some silicone wire, stuff that I had on hand. You can use any kind of wire really, but you need a fan. There's a couple of different styles that you can use. There's the blower type, and then there's the this what we're more used to seeing for computers. Both these are 40 by 40 by 10 millimeters. That's the dimensions. They're 5 volt. You can use a 12 volt, but you kind of, with either one, you need to know what kind of battery you're going to be using and how, if you want to adjust the speed, what you need in order to do that. But beyond that, you need a cover to cover up the fan to keep it from getting broke. That's just a hard plastic cover I found on DigiKey. You can get them really Amazon, eBay, all kinds of electronic supply places. You can use the little metal ones. This is just what I picked out, what I like. And then some heat shrink for different applications. You need a battery. I use a 7.4 micro or a mini LiPo battery. Wired to Deans. All of my batteries are LiPos and everything's wired to Deans, so that just makes charging that much easier for me. But you can use any kind of battery really, but you need to know how to get that voltage to go to the fan that you're using, how to get that stuff to match. And then a switch. So I used an on switch. That way I could run 2 speeds. And then some resistors, 30 ohm and a 15 ohm, rated at 1 watt. You could probably go with a half watt, but I like using a little bigger resistors so they don't heat up as bad. And then some strapping that I use to make the power supply, the pouch for that, and the switch, and then some Velcro of some with sticky back, some without. All right, so let's get to the fan. All right, so the fan, there's a couple of different ways you can do this. First off, you need to figure out where you want to mount it, and then you need to drill a hole that is the same size as the fan blade, so you can maximize airflow. But for me, I knew that I wouldn't use this mount up here. I don't use night vision goggles. I'm not going to use a camera or anything like that, so it was best for me just to go ahead and mount the fan right there, and that would help maximize airflow directly into my goggles. All right, so my original thought was to use the squirrel cage fan, or the blower fan that is, and mount it to the inside, and that way the air would blow directly from the bottom into my goggles. But I found, since I have such a big head, that this was going to take up too much room and that wasn't going to work for me. So what I used instead was this fan. So cut the hole, mounted the fan, put the cover on it. There you go. Pretty straightforward, pretty easy. Now to get air into my goggles, since this fan doesn't blow air downward, it blows it that way. I took the inside liner here. There's a padded liner here, and then there's the styrofoam one. Took the styrofoam one out, and I hollowed out a spot where air could blow down into it, and then hollowed out 2 ducts, and those blow directly into my goggles. So that solved my airflow problem. And then to help increase the efficiency of that, I took some not styrofoam, but some Velcro, and I stuck Velcro around the inside of my helmet where all of that hollowed out spot was on that styrofoam, and I add some Velcro to the styrofoam as well, and when put it all together, it helps create a better air seal and helps direct the airflow better into my goggles. Now to wire this, pretty straightforward. I just ran the wire down the shell of the helmet underneath the padding, and I covered it up with a little bit of black Gorilla tape, like duct tape. And then this section here, there was Velcro, so I used a Velcro strip. I run it out the vent hole there in the back, and then underneath the cover, I cut a hole in the cover right here, and then this pouch that I made out of the old strapping that I had laying around, I run the wires inside of that. Now inside of this pouch is a flashlight like this that you can buy from Harbor Freight or the dollar store, or someplace like that. And you can probably actually modify this and use the power of the batteries inside this, and use the switch to run your fan for $1. But I wanted to use a LiPo like this, so what I did is I knocked out the lens and the LEDs, and that was just the right size for that battery to slide inside of. And then on this end here, I removed the switch that was in the flashlight, and I added this on switch here, which fit just inside of that. Cut a slit in that rubber cover, so that gave me a little bit of dust protection, a little bit of water protection for my switch, and voila, that goes back into the end of the flashlight, which is now a tube because you now removed the light part of it. Now on the switch part, after all that was mounted, I took my 15 ohm and my 30 ohm resistor. I hooked one up to one side of the tab, one to the other side on that tab, and then joined the two together along with the red wire from the fan. And so that now gives me 2 speeds to my fan. Now, to get power to my switch and to my fan, I need to get a wire to my battery. So I soldered on another wire with the Dean's connector that goes to this. And then after all of this was done, being soldered, attached to the cap, I then took my hot glue gun and I encased all of this in hot glue. So when I slid my battery inside of my tube like that, none of these would interfere with the battery. They wouldn't poke a hole in the battery or do any damage to the battery, nor could the battery do any damage to the resistors or the switch or the wire or anything like that. So everything's encased, nothing's going to short out. And all of that is mounted inside of that pouch right there. So when I'm ready to play, slide my battery in, hook up my Dean's connector, close my pouch up, and then put my bungees back over top. Everything's nice and secure. Everything's protected in that nice hard aluminum flashlight, so no damage will happen to my battery while I'm playing. So that's my fan setup. It works great. It's a little bit, you can hear the fan for sure when you have your helmet on. So it is a little bit noisy. A 12 volt fan would probably run a little bit quieter. And with a 12 volt fan, you can actually run the battery directly to the fan and not have to worry about using a resistor unless you want to slow it down further and get your second speed. Because a 12 volt fan usually can handle, like 4.5 volts all the way up to 13.5, somewhere in there. So anyway, that's just, you got to figure out what fan you're using and go from there. But that's my fan setup, and hopefully there's something here that somebody can use, and have a good time out there on the field.